Sorry. So next.
As we all know, eye is a special science organ which requires immediate attention and care. Looking to the vast experience of Dr. Ramni in ophthalmology and prevailing COVID situation, pandemic situation, nowadays the topic is chosen. So now I request Dr. Ramni, Professor Veterinary Surgery and Radiology, Madras Veterinary College, Tanuvasu, Chennai, to deliver her webinar on virtual ophthalmology and application of teleophthalmology during COVID-19. Dr. Ramni, madam, please.
To connect with many of the senior faculties of the ISVS as well as to other faculty members and colleagues and friends. And this topic of virtual ophthalmology and application of teleophthalmology during this pandemic COVID-19 carries some importance in the sense the safety precautions which we now adopt during COVID-19 pandemic. So social distancing. So these things have actually pushed industries for remote operations. So that has happened in the medical field also. And so that so ophthalmology, it is actually a branch of medical science where we deal with images. So we study the images and then try to make some diagnosis, or it is a image-based study. And teleophthalmology is actually a tech-savvy method. So here actually you should have good images for the services to happen, but at the same time you should also have a good support of an internet facility. So this internet facility actually addresses to the accessibility. So the access to the information is rather reduced. They will increase. The gap of the accessibility is reduced with the help of internet. And with the help of teleophthalmology, the access gap of these patients in the rural area, so that is reduced. So they will be able to connect to an expert ophthalmologist and in an urban area. So that is actually the actual concept behind telemedicine and of course in teleophthalmology. So here in ophthalmology, when we are talking about images, these images are virtual images. So you have real images and virtual images. In optics, when an incident beam comes from an object and converges to a point, it is called a real image. And the same when the rays meet, the divergent rays, when it meets at one point, it results in a virtual image. Or in a simple term, the real images can be actually produced on a screen, but not the virtual. So the virtual images basically are used in various diagnostic equipments in ophthalmology. And these images are captured and then used for this teleophthalmology services. So now, during this COVID-19 pandemic period, actually the safety precautions and the policies which we are talking about has a real say on the advancement or in the proper carry out of the medical practice for the patients. So actually what happened in December 19 with just a simple respiratory infection that has caused raised to a pneumonic infection later, and then finally resulted in a new disease entity, and that is actually causing morbidity and mortality across the world. So the precautionary measures during this period is also important at the same time when we consider about the proper delivery of a medical practice. So this is to meet these two. So you have a crisis on one side, at the same time safety measures to be adopted by the health professionals. So this makes you to rethink the use of telemedicine, especially teleophthalmology. So that is why this is getting strengthened in the human medicine these days. So what actually calls for you in the veterinary ophthalmology is, now though we are not directly dealing with patients affected with the COVID-19, we actually deal with pets, and there can be some indirect contact through handlers and people attending to the pets. So in this way, so this calls for a revisit of teleophthalmology practices happening in medicine side, in the medical side, to employ little into the veterinary field also. So this talk is actually structured. In the beginning of the lecture, you will see some slides basically about teleophthalmology services, how it is actually affected, and followed by the safety precautions that are carried out during COVID-19 in a consultation setup, and what precautions when we do an opthal exam, how to take precautions during direct examination, and finally few slides on some initiation that has been done on teleophthalmology practice also. Rather, I can say we are forced to practice. So that made me to think on these lines. And finally, we will close this discussion on challenges in teleophthalmology services. So with this, we will go to the little introduction. We will go to the first slide. So virtual and teleophthalmology. So the concept is very simple. Like you have a patient in front of attending doctor, and you can actually get some information from them. And if there is some difficulty, you can get a good opinion from an expert in a different area, located in a different area. So the concept is to actually to bridge the gap between the rural and the urban population. But now, even within the urban population, because of the social distancing, we have some difficulties to directly meet the doctor and get the appointments. So these services are basically made possible in teleophthalmology because of two things. One is medical equipment, which has got, they are all called digital medical equipments in ophthalmology, where we get good images and a good support of telecommunications. So these two are rather set as the key drivers for a good teleophthalmology service. So now these services, teleophthalmology services, can be affected in two ways. One is a synchronous teleophthalmology and another is a asynchronous teleophthalmology. Synchronous in the sense all the participants are in a real time, enables a real time interaction. So for example, video conferencing. So as far as my knowledge goes, the video conferencing, the WhatsApp called video conferencing is by policy, it is not actually accepted in teleophthalmology. You can make a Skype call instead. And so the interaction between participants, between the patient will be there, the attending doctor will be there, and the expert will be there on the other side. So they will be able to guide the attending doctor in consultations. For example, if a patient is coming with some severe ocular pain, so you have to address to that issue because it is an emergency, and try to view the eye. Then you will have some difficulty because of the pain in the eye. The patient won't be able to open the eye properly. So the expert can give from one side to use some local drops and then start looking at the object at the eye. And so finally, the irritation could be due to some foreign bodies in the cornea. So that would have been causing irritation in the eye. So they can also guide how to remove the foreign body. So these are the advantages in a real-time situation. In a asynchronous teleophthalmology, this is actually a store and forward method. So where the data is captured and all the images are captured and then stored and then transmitted for review at a later time. So now let us see the scope and applications of teleophthalmology. So as we said, the first access is the specialist can go to the remote area through the internet and then work on the patients in the remote areas. So apart from this, there is also one important application in human ophthalmology, that is ophthalmic disease screening. For example, in a population of diabetic patients, so the incidence of diabetic retinopathy or other diseases of the posterior segment like chorioretinitis. So all these can be screened. So once the disease is screened, this is in a particular population, so they can have a better idea about how to go about further regarding the diagnosis as well as monitoring or treatment if anything required. So this diabetic screening we were talking about in ophthalmology, there are also, apart from the disease, the screening is happening also for refraction corrections. Example, in schools, they conduct regular refraction screening for students. So that also will help to study the any refraction error problem, and they will be able to correct it. So another is the distant learning. So distant learning is also very important, as we all do now. So this is also one distant learning. So distant learning actually helps in the process, but we already we knew that in a proper seminar setup, when we attend, we have attended many live programs also, like live surgeries also were telecasted. So this is all possible because of better video transmission cables. So that is about the distant learning. So now from this, you know two things. That is, you need a good camera and you need a good computer terminal with network facilities. So it appears very simple, but the investment cost for this is very high. We will see this in the following slides. So now to take the pictures of the eye, so we will come to the external eye. So it is enough if you use a standard camera with a digital camera with a where there is provisions to take still as well as a movie. In case of the anterior segment, so definitely you need a slit lamp biomicroscope. So a camera attached to the slit lamp biomicroscope will be used to take pictures of the anterior segment. Then to the posterior segment of or the retina, you have a camera itself that is called the fundus camera, which actually works on the principle of indirect ophthalmoscope and the optical coherence tomography, OCT. So that is also another important modality, imaging modality that helps in the in teleophthalmology services. So now we will see what is the life cycle that is actually involved in a telehealth visit, or we call it as VBS, video visits. First is the scheduling. So the scheduling of the cases can be done by the help of a staff in the front desk, and so during scheduling, either it can be either an established patient or the patient themselves can approach the office and ask for an appointment for a video visit, or this can be done over phone basically. Then it is called as a televisit. So during scheduling, actually the staff can apprise the patient what is the actual process in this televisit, how it will be carried out, and also how if it is going to be charged. So that also will be appraised to the patient, and the limitations also can be informed to the patient. So these are all important while scheduling the case. So next is the history. History is very important, as like in any disease diagnosis. History, a detailed history is very important. So you spend equal time, like how you do a normal examination in a clinic. So the same time you take, or in fact you can take more time to obtain a good history from the patient. The next step in screening in the televisit is the visual acuity in human ophthalmology. So visual acuity is basically to arrive at the refraction correction. So there are number of mobile apps which are available now. The mobile apps basically is the eye chart. So when you go to an ophthalmologist, normally you will see an eye chart. So that is otherwise called a Sladen chart. So this chart will have different lines with the letters. So with the help of an app, the patient will be able to inform the attending doctor, or they can also refer to a doctor, the distant doctor, that up to which line the patient can read. and or with the help of a printed chart also they can do this. And another thing is the use of a Amsler grid. You can see an Amsler grid here. I will take my pointer at this time. Okay, so this is the Amsler grid, which is a large square board, and you will have small squares in this with a center black spot. So what happens is the patient can actually keep the Amsler grid 14 to 16 inches away and then try to look for any wavery lines in this. He can also look for any dark shadows by looking at the different squares in the grid. And another thing is he can also look at the black spot, and he can also check by looking at the black spot whether he can see the four corners of the square. So this is actually a test that is done to check for a macular degeneration. And also this will help to arrive at some degenerative changes at the optic disc. So these are all some early things which we can do at the patient side. So these are the references for that. So all these online diffraction tools can be incorporated. So once you do this visual acuity, after comes the examination, the video visit. So the doctor will be able to, through the video visit, they will get a good status of the psychological as well as neurological status of the patient. Then examination of the eye starts. So with the help of a first initial light, a corneal light, we can use a light, shine light into the eye, and external adnexal, pupil, motility, so alignment. So that is very important in human ophthalmology of the eyeballs, and anterior segment iris. So all these can be examined initially. You can also ask the patient, because if it is lighting is not good, you can also ask the patient to move more towards the window, or you can, if possible, if it is going to be done by the attending doctor in his consultation room where you are going to do a video, you can also have some light with the rheostat to adjust the intensity of light inside the room. So the next is the intraocular pressure. So any pain in the eye should be is a worry, and intraocular pressure can be examined even at home. Tonometers are available, but only thing is they are very expensive and hence not very widely used. So glaucoma, which arises due to intraocular pressure rise, then you have different types of app-based testing for this perimetry study. They are called the Peristat, Notal Vision, or Visual Art and Science, etc. So all these apps also can be used to study. So all this will give you not exactly a proper inference, but it will tell you whether a visit to the ophthalmologist is required or not. Now comes the term virtual triage. So we were talking about the history, the objective measurements, and visual acuity, intraocular pressure as objective measurements, and then taking photographs of the eye. So all these things forms the virtual triage in a ophthalmology service, teleophthalmology service. So followed by this, we can go for the actual planning of the interventions and planning and medication changes. So you can plan any modifications in the medications. So all these you can recommend depending upon the disease condition, or whether they need any referrals, or whether any concern for planned surgeries, or schedule of surgery, whether according to the disease severity, whether it has to be given a prior date, prepone the date. So all these things you can discuss. And so that is how a teleophthalmology service will work. So this is basically the flow chart explaining the functionality of the vision center. As what we discussed earlier, the patient entry is there, then the examination by the paramedical staff. So they have plenty of healthcare professionals in the human side and paramedical staff. Then vision and the refraction test followed by that. then the teleconsultation, the video visit, and then the reception of a treatment advice. Then if they need further treatment, so it can be referred to a main hospital, or otherwise a proper advice can be given to the patient. So now let us see some teleophthalmology services that is happening in India. So Sankara Nethralaya is Vision Research Foundation in Sankara Nethralaya is one of the leading eye care institute based in Chennai, and so they have a very good rural teleophthalmology mobile units are there. So here again, basically they use slit lamp as well as fundus camera to take pictures from the rural or from the mobile camp where they conduct a camp, and then these are transferred to the central hub through teleconnectivity, where senior ophthalmologist will diagnose the condition and the treatment will be given accordingly. So at this juncture, I want to also thank this great institute and the chairman, Dr. Badrinath sir, and also another Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Dr. Radhakrishnan, for their initial help rendered during the struggle when we had during our setting up of the ophthalmology unit in the university. We have one more hospital in Tamil Nadu, a chain of hospitals, that is the Aravind Eye Hospital. So there also they use teleophthalmology service. So there they have a van or a mobile van which actually contains all the ophthalmic equipments that is required for doing a complete ophthalmic exam. So the patients will be screened and these images will be transferred to the ophthalmologist in the base hospital through the satellite. So this satellite facility is provided by Indian Space Research Organization of Department of Space. And so from the base hospital, the ophthalmologist will in return, they give their opinion to the attending doctor, and the medical facility will be telecasted in that way. So this is one thing. These are the two teleophthalmology services that is happening in the human side. So now we will see some different tools that are required to take images. So we were talking about camera. We just said really camera, and also to take anterior segment we need a slit lamp, and to take posterior segment we need fundus camera, etc. So regarding the digital camera, so here from my experience, I will say that you can use Sony digital camera and or any digital camera where the optics is important. So the Carl-Zeiss lens is used in this particular camera. You have also Sony camera with a G lens, but Carl-Zeiss gives a better output of images. Carl-Zeiss is known, the company is known for resolution of good lenses and also microscopes in the optics field. So taking a picture of the organ which deals with optics, so I think you can go for a Carl-Zeiss. Then the next instrument is the indirect ophthalmoscope. There is a video in this. I will try to play the video. So this is how we do an indirect ophthalmoscopy. So I'm trying to explain here the condensing lens that is provided in the indirect ophthalmoscope, which has got a white line. So that is very important. I'm showing again. So that should face the patient side. So that is more, that is more, it's less convex. And so that should face the patient side and then try to view the image of the fundus. So now with the help of your index finger and the thumb, you will be able to do some magnification of the image which you are able to see also at the same time. So indirect ophthalmoscopy just showed some an example in our field, but indirect ophthalmoscopy is very useful as a tool for teleophthalmology. So that is what I wanted to say here. So now next is the slit lamp biomicroscope. I will take the pointer. So slit lamp biomicroscope. So with the help of this, also you will be able to see the anterior segment of the eye and also the pathologies on the cornea. Then the fundus camera. So the fundus camera is also important, where you have provisions to take the 1 minute. So with the help of a fundus camera, you will be able to see the fundic images, and you also have another provision in the fundus camera where you can remove this head of this fundus camera and connect the external the head for screening the external of the eye. So in that way you will be able to take pictures of the cornea as well as little of the anterior segment. Then comes the OCT, that is the optical coherence tomography. So that is actually revolutionized the imaging techniques in ophthalmology. So this OCT basically is an imaging technique where they rely on low coherence interferometry to take cross section of the ocular images. So light rays are used to take images, and the first picture here shows the normal eye imaged with the help of a time. This is spectral domain OCT, time domain OCT, and anterior segment OCT. So you have 3 types of OCTs mainly for different areas. And the anterior segment OCT is otherwise called, it is marketed as Visande. And with the help of this, you will be able to take an image of the anterior segment. And here you can see the corneal thickness very clearly, and the anterior chamber as well as the iridocorneal angle. And so the corneal specialist and glaucoma specialist, they actually prefer to use anterior segment OCT. Now in this picture, you can see the use of a spectral domain OCT for retinal imaging. So the OCT actually helps to take sections of the eye up to 10 micron thickness, and in fact, because of after the invention of the OCT, in the toxicology studies, actually the lab animals will be maintained, and finally to know the result of this toxic residues in the retina, the animals will be sacrificed to study the histopathology. But with the help of OCT, this is not required. You don't have to sacrifice the animals for getting a good picture of the retina. Then here in this is a time domain OCT, which is again an anterior segment OCT, which shows an unsuccessful post-op DSEK. So keratoplasty is one important surgery, very common surgery that is being performed in human beings, and there are different types of keratoplasty now. So this is DSEK, is a Descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty. So you can see the gap here. So this is the recipient, and the donor, this is a donor tissue. So there is no good sufficient opposition between this, so that you will be able to see very clearly with the help of an OCT image. So to this extent, you will be able to get images with the help of an OCT, and these images are actually there in the OPS site. So OPS is Ophthalmic Photographic Society. So they are actually the eye imaging experts, in fact. So they have OPS, they have webinars as well as tutorials. So if you want to have a good idea about how to take good pictures or a good photographer for the eye, then you can also get connected with this society. and try to get some more informations. So this is another tool. So we have seen some, we are going to seeing some tools. So these are all educational tools. The previous tools actually we'll be using, the ophthalmologist will be using, for example, an indirect ophthalmoscope, fundus camera and all. But in this eye view, this is actually marketed by Gunton Ophthalmics. So this is a unique tool which enables the patient to view their own floaters. So this instrument, it has an inside, there is a, take the pointer. So inside there is a small hole through which the light comes, and as the patient try to see through this eye view tool or light or the instrument, so they will be able to see the particles suspended in the vitreous, for example, protein filaments or strands, etc. Even capsular opacities, subcapsular opacities also, the patient will be able to see their own lesions. So with some experience, they say even the abnormalities on the cornea as well as on the anterior chamber also can be viewed. So, so this gives a better education for the client, that they will be so that they will get a confidence, they will get realized that what exactly is the problem in the real world because of the lesions inside the eye. And so this they can use, and then if there is a problem, they can attend to the go to a doctor for an expert opinion. One more advantage is there for this tool, that is many people are using contact lenses. So if the contact lens, if any debris is there also, you can check with the help of an eye view. Now, these are all another set of educational tools that can be kept in the teleophthalmology platform. That is, if you go to any doctor, you would have seen eye anatomy chart. This is very common. So also the cataract eye model. So these are very common. But nowadays, there are other models, advanced models, to demonstrate the posterior vitreous detachment, or after cataract surgery. We'll come to the last slide. See here, the position of the lens. Because many people, they will not understand what happens and when you will insert the lens. Some people will ask whether the lens can be taken in between for cleaning. So such questions will be there. So you can actually give a clear-cut idea about how the surgery is going to happen and where you are going to put the lens. So these models will help. For example, here you see the LASIK eye model, where with the help of a rubber band with a fulcrum, you will be able to tell the patient that by adjusting the curvature on the cornea, you will be able to image the focus the image directly on the retina, so that the vision will be improved. Then this is a corneal eye model, where you can have various types of cornea to discuss about the astigmatism to the patient. So these are all different types of eye models. So this is another advancement, I can say, in the teleophthalmology. So robotic remote controlled stereo slit lamp. So slit lamp, actually with the help of a slit lamp, you will be able to see the images of the anterior segment. So the robotic slit lamp actually works on a remote controlled slit lamp. Remote controlled slit lamp, where the patient will be there and the robotic slit lamp will be there on one side. So and the ophthalmologist who is going to work and see the images will be on a remote place. So they will have the control of this slit lamp, and to have a good view of the whole setup, you can also have an additional small web camera mounted above the patient and the slit lamp. So we will see in the next slide. So these are the modifications that are done in the slit lamp to affect this remote control service. So the slit width control can be adjusted, or the height of the slit also can be controlled. The slit angle can be controlled. All this can be done from the. from the remote place. So this is done with the help of a joystick. So these are the two joysticks that are used, and with the help of a joystick, you'll be able to adjust the height, width, etc. from a remote place. And these are the images of a human volunteer's eye that was taken when they were trying to use this robotic slit lamp. And it also has got a keypad, so where you have even facility to switch over from left eye to the right eye, and with the addition of local memory, lesions on the right and the left, all these can be imaged properly. So human patients are used to study initially. Of course, they followed the DOH, that is the Declaration of Helsinki, were followed, which is actually the cornerstone for experimentation on human beings. So this is again another novel method in teleophthalmology, again with the use of a slit lamp. So that is an app, that is an iSmart EMR app. So combination of a tablet and a video call actually helps in the whole service. And to connect the, you can see here, the CAD design, this is a CAD design of an iSmart Cyclope. So this iSmart Cyclope can be connected to the slit lamp, and then this Cyclope is again connected to the iPad. So this actually uses a proper medical management, because the doctor will be able to see directly the lesions on the patient in a remote area, sitting in a remote area. So this is again, this comes under the synchronous teleophthalmology service. So they can directly see the lesions from there and then work accordingly. So we have seen some different equipments or apps that helps in teleophthalmology. And so this is a software again. So this is a Russian software, and this Russian software is developed by Alexander Rodin. So he owns the right for this software. So this is actually nothing but the patients can, instead of an office, this software can be approached and they can register in the software, and this ifile.com will act as a middleman to, they will send the images that they receive in the software, in the file, and that will be sent to the specialist in the ophthalmology departments, because it is in Russia. So Moscow State University ophthalmology department specialists were collaborated with for this work. And so no need of any personal data, only an email is necessary for them. And also the images after 30 days it will be deleted from the system automatically. So these are all some good security issues with this. So this is the actual page where there are simple steps where you can take first a digital photo, and then the step 2 is to register in the ifile.com, and then you upload the picture, and followed by that, in 24 to 48 hours, you will be connected to the ophthalmologist. So now with this very few rather advancements I have collected, but there are a lot, plenty of apps are also there, where Z generation can in fact look into that. So the future of virtual ophthalmology is given more stress now. Why? Because of the social distancing. So this is what I said in the early introduction of the topic. So the industries all work at the remote operations. Even there is a worry now that after this pandemic, where there will be a new normal life. So because and in medicine, mainly telehealth will be involved. Patients are also happy to adopt a video visit, because it saves time for them, basically. And hence there should be some improved focus on smartphone cameras, and also attachments for taking self photography, and advancements on what we were talking about, the remote controlled slit lamp devices. Non-mydriatic fundus camera, that is very important. I did not stress that point in the fundus camera. So that is, you don't have to dilate the eye to take pictures because you use infrared rays. So non-mydriatic fundus camera and optical coherence tomography machines. So these are all sometimes who we cannot say it can even appear in the public areas so that pictures can be taken. So telehealth is going to be the mainstream and is going to form a permanent role. So though previously it was reserved only for urban area, rural areas, now because of this pandemic, COVID-19, we will see this stress more on the teleophthalmology in human medicine. So they have started concentrating on these lines. So the impact of COVID is basically implications mainly due to restrictions, economic implications. So all ophthalmologists are now considering of virtualizing their services during this COVID period. So for want of not getting exposed to unnecessarily when you go out and then meet people directly. So our concern now is reports in animals. So M&M weekly report during 8th of this month, they came out with a report that the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, beta coronavirus infection in companion animals. So companion animals, so they have said that in cats, they have found COVID. So in India also, this is there in the air now, like in the news, are elephants prone to coronavirus? So Rajasthan test jumbos to find out. So these are all now in the process. So the relevance of this COVID to animals, we'll see few articles on that. Zoonotic coronavirus, though they are originated in bats, in a small number of animals are also equally affected. So here you can say dogs and cats. We are worried on these two. Dogs and cats, zoo tigers, lions, and also farmed mink. So they are all naturally affected with this. So mostly they suspect that it could be a transmission from human to animal. In addition, experimental studies also have been initiated where they have found in ferrets, golden Syrian hamsters, and Egyptian fruit bats and cats. They also show some transmission, especially when co-housed with animals of the same species. So they also can get infected. So what exactly this article says? A small number of companion animals worldwide have been naturally infected with this virus. And what is actually added is 2 domestic cats with a respiratory illness lasting for 8 to 10 days. This is the first report for COVID-2 in the United States. And these cats were owned by persons suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patients. So luckily both the cats recovered. So the implications is human to animal transmission can occasionally occur. And companion animals that test positive for coronavirus should be monitored and separated for persons and other animals until they recover. So these are the implications of coronavirus in the animal kingdom. So we have not completely seen the effect of coronavirus and its affection in animals. We are yet to see more. So considering all these points, the safety precautions which we are going to adopt during COVID-19 is, of course, the first is the basic safety of hand hygiene, and then you should be more careful if the patient is coming or the owner is coming from a red zone or a hot zone, or if they are a recovered patient. So all these things you should stand through your mind when you start attending starting your practice during this period. The precautions which you take in the theatre, there should be safe OT precautions, practices, perioperative protocols, use of N95 mask, and use of povidone iodine. So this, they say, very important in case of human ophthalmology when they started their practice, especially when they started working on intraocular surgeries. So while doing even the cataract surgery, even this is again confirmed by scientists at University of Toronto. Like so, there can be aerosolizations of these products. So when you do a cataract, it can happen. And so the use of powder even in the irrigation bag is very important while doing the surgery. And a large amount of Viscomat use, that also you can adopt. Then when you use an irrigation aspiration line for doing the phaco, so that also they will use for 6 seconds outside the eye before the start. So these are all to take more precautions in the patient. From the patient, they should not get any infection. So all the theatre professional personnel should be very careful while attending to a person during this time. So because they can be sometimes carriers also. So another precaution which they should take in the outpatient department is technology, use of good technologies for the benefit of both the patient as well as the staff. So wherein you can use non-contact or distant instruments to reduce the necessity for a closer exam, and complete digitalization of the records. So don't touch any paper unnecessarily. Touched by so if it is handled by other persons, so you are not supposed to handle. So conjunctivitis is also now considered as, so that is where the whole problem came in ophthalmology, to have an awareness more. Subsequent to the sad death of a Wuhan ophthalmologist, Dr. Li Wenliang. So following his death only, so they came to know conjunctivitis also could be one of the first symptom, can occasionally be a first symptom of COVID, where the transmission can occur through tears. So that is why it's always better to avoid a close contact exam during ophthalmic procedures. And sometimes you will also get a asymptomatic patient from a red zone. So there the worry is still more. So our part is, these lines are client education. So client education in the sense to use a proper mask. So I got actually all these two or three slides on webinar on mask, use of proper mask, by attending a webinar conducted by Center Netralia during COVID season, COVID pandemic. So this aerosol protection, they say the mask will protect. The mask will protect in two ways. One is inward protection as well as outward protection. So a study conducted with the tea cloth, we will see here, many people, they wear just a kerchief and use it as a mask, or the surgical mask, then N95 mask. So the leak was with the reference point of 100. The leak was 33 in tea cloth and 25 in surgical mask and 1 in N95 mask. So when it comes to outward protection, so after a exhalation or sneezing or cough, the particles that are leaked are 90 with the tea cloths, surgical mask it is 50, and with the N95 it is 30. So that is, we will see the one more slide with the mask. So here, see in this, just with the exhalation, the particles reach up to 1.5 meters. And with a little sneeze or cough, it can reach up to 2 meters. And large particles can even go and reach up to 6 meters. So that is why we say wearing a mask alone is not sufficient. So this is where the social distancing comes into play. So that is very important. You can also keep some boards like no face mask, no service. So that way you can educate the clients. So these aerosol generating events should be addressed by putting a good face mask, for which you should know the fitness of the face mask. So the quantitative fitting test uses a machine to check the leakage. So here in this picture, you can see that with the help of this machine, you can check the leakage. Or there is also a seal check test performed by the wearer each time the mask is worn. So the completeness of putting a mask, that should be again stressed in the outpatient ward. Surgical mask actually can be used up to 4 hours, whereas an N95 mask can be used up to 8 hours. So now here comes the another need for not a mask. Mask will mask your actual communication. In the sense, 55% of the communication is actually visual. So the traditional mask, what it will do, it will block your face, and so your facial expressions will not be put properly. And sometimes miscommunication, of course, there are reports says miscommunication is a leading cause for medical errors. So what happens is when you wear a clear mask, so there will be more important, like you can build a rapport with the patient and they will be happy because that improves the relationship. Why I'm talking about clear mask here is, this happened to me also in the outpatient ward. After operating one of my patients during this time, it was a very, it was not for a cataract surgery, it was for a problem outside the eye, that was a nictitans. So the dog was a very friendly dog, and after surgery during the post-op, so while examining in a different setup with a complete mask and all, so earlier the patient came some 2 months before, so it was a friendly dog. So then the owner, then the dog started actually not realizing me, and then started barking at me. And the owner said, Simba is not able to recognize you, madam, because you are wearing a mask. Okay? So that actually made me, okay, we should rethink on these lines also. Breakdowns in your precautions. See, this is a dog which was brought for a John's test, which I am doing. And then we are very working on the presence of the dye, looking for the presence of the dye in the mouth. But what happens? Everybody is concentrating on this. See what happened to the mask of the handler. So here in the next picture also you see, this is the mask that he's wearing. So these are all can cause, you will be put to more chances of exposure to a disease is more. COVID is more in such cases. Now we will see the other equipment which we commonly use to get a closer eye exam. So this is a video to show you the, this is a video to show you the use of a direct ophthalmoscope, and where the ophthalmoscope is used to examine the eye from a distance. So initially we will start with the distant ophthalmoscopy with the help of a direct ophthalmoscope and look for any shadows in the eye, starting from the anterior segment, then the lens, then the posterior segment. Then you can come very near to the patient and start looking into the eye. So this is from here. Yeah, now this is a danger zone. So you are very, very near to the patient. So a distant examination probably you can carry out. This is taken during the pre-COVID times. So this examination, you should be very careful when you do these times, that you should necessarily go for a breast shield. So that is one thing which I want to stress by putting this video. And another thing is the various pictures which we see on the right side. That is, if you use the direct ophthalmoscope with the help of +20 lens, you will be able to see the cornea. Then further down, with the help of +15, you are able to see the chamber. Then with the help of +15 again, sometimes if there is a detached retina towards the anterior part, even that is also visible. Here, the presence of a developing cataract, that also you are able to see here on the vitreous, on the +8. So till this, you will be able to take pictures with the help of a digital camera. So all these pictures were taken with the help of a digital camera with a Carl Zeiss lens. So now to take the picture of the fundus, that is at -2, you are able to see the fundus. So that is not possible with that is possible only with the help of a fundus camera. So the other examination procedures which are safe to practice during this time is the retinoscopy to arrive at the refraction correction after cataract surgery, or indirect ophthalmoscopy, as we have seen in the earlier one video. This is also a safe method which you can practice because you are at a distance. This is from the handlers. This is again taken during the pre-COVID time. And funduscopy, mainly with the help of a fundus camera. This is a fundus camera picture after the phaco surgery in a lion in Vandalur Zoo here. So planning and scheduling. So planning and scheduling is very important. So in the OPD, you have to keep all the doors open. So we are actually going through some slides where you can adopt some changes in your practice. So keep all the doors open. Strictly, the order is there that you should not use any air conditioners. Then you can always have a fan behind the examiner so that droplets will not reach you, even if some droplets are there on the air. Then when you use a tone-open cap, take the pointer. So when you use a tone-open cap, you should see that the caps are changed regularly, and you can have a separate room. So this actually happened with the during our examination. We had a patient with the conjunctivitis, so we were all worried. So this doesn't mean that you don't give your service. You can always give the service, but take the patient in a separate room and then do. Use of nitrile gauze, breath shield, then safe distance while examining and talking. So this is also very important. You don't have to talk every time with the patient in a very close setup. Then avoid direct detailed counseling. You can always shift to the phone. Planning and scheduling. So planning and scheduling is very important. So in the OPD, you have to keep all the doors open. So we are actually going through some slides where you can adopt some changes in your practice. So keep all the doors open. Strictly, the order is there that you should not use any air conditioners. Then you can always have a fan behind the examiner so that droplets will not reach you, even if some droplets are there on the air. Then when you use a tone-open cap, take the pointer. So when you use a tone-open cap, you should see that the caps are changed regularly, and you can have a separate room. So this actually happened with the during our examination. We had a patient with the conjunctivitis, so we were all worried. So this doesn't mean that you don't give your service. You can always give the service, but take the patient in a separate room and then do. Use of nitrile gauze, breath shield, then safe distance while examining and talking. So this is also very important. You don't have to talk every time with the patient in a very close setup. Then avoid direct detailed counseling. You can always shift to the phone. You can give the phone number and they can call you from a distance and then talk in the same scenario. Then there can also have a eye care video, how to install the drops, because these things takes time in our practice. So they can just see the video and understand the procedure. This picture, actually here, see the handler facing away from the examiner. She is not facing me. And also additionally, I am wearing a dental drape also. So this also is very useful now, where you can always, between patients during consultations, you can change. So this gives a better examination of the patient by patient looking at this side towards you and the handler away from you. Use of breath shields. So this is again actually a must which we have practiced. So during the close eye exam, breath shield is there for all the personals working. It is a direct ophthalmoscopy being done, indirect ophthalmoscopy again done by our PhD student. Then here during ultrasound imaging also, or the even the handler. So all of us are wearing a breath shield. So there is, when you wear breath shield, actually I found some difficulty also while adjusting the head loop in the Interact. But anyway, you have to adjust and learn accordingly. Now, during this COVID season, have you really changed the number and type of the surgery? So these are also important. Only emergency surgeries you have to look into. So emergency surgeries in the sense trauma, or this is also considered as an emergency because of ocular trauma, ocular tumor of the anterior segment. So following a CT taken in our hospital, we have found that it is not affecting the posterior segment as well as on the bony area. So we have enucleated the eye subsequent to this. So change it to quicker procedures. So with the help of advanced screening like this. Then the question of bilateral surgery. Can we do if it is a cataract? So that is being practiced now in human medicine. So as far as veterinary patients are concerned, we always say no only to bilateral surgery. Always unilateral surgeries are recommended. Then give smaller schedule for social distancing. So do not try to crowd over. So give only less number of students, less number of appointments you start giving. Then no trainees operating. This is actually a very sad thing. So to reduce the revisits, but there is no other go. The experienced persons can always try. Trainees can probably do when the situation settles. So this is a horse with a blunt trauma and the eye injury. This is again considered as an emergency. Anterior luxated lens. So this picture is very clear. This is of course taken in the hospital setup by us. So this is how you should take the picture of the eye, where always the reflection from behind, that is retroillumination, should be there. This is again another cat, very poor cat, actually got injured by a pellet. So that actually they were actually pointing towards the forehead. And probably it got entered into the orbit of the eye, and the eye was pushed back. So all these were considered as emergencies. Of course, this is one of the very important emergency. That is the proptosis of the eyeball in a goat. Then also in case of a dog. This is a case which I attended yesterday. The proptosis of the eye. So again, the breath shield is very important here. That's what I want to stress. Then this is another cat that was brought with a glaucoma. So you can see the intraocular pressure is very high. So where you have to go for do an emergency anterior chamber synthesis. So this, by looking into this, as academicians, we also have research on one side. So postpone all research investigations. So that is what I feel that you can do, because maybe you have to repeat the trials, because procurement of the animals, then maintenance of the animals. So all these are going to be a worry during this time. So what perioperative investigations of personals, preoperative thing you have to introduce in the OPD is, so this is what is all these points we are following here in our institute. And this is the, we can see all the surgeons of the Madras Veterinary College. So lined up, and this is how we are ready during COVID time to receive the patients. Maintaining a record is very important. Maintaining the record of the attending personals, their travel history, then the temperature record and the area classified as per COVID, from which area they are coming, and then followed by a good hand hygiene sanitization. So this happens outside the ward. And then regarding the stressing of the for putting a mask, then about social distancing also they will be briefed, because they'll be worried why they are not called, because they have come, they are waiting in the waiting room for a prolonged period. So all these things can be addressed. Adequate ventilation. So this is so we have a very big room where we have different cubicles. So actually how we use is, in the first cubicle when the patient is there, the second cubicle we will not see patient, only the third cubicle will be used. So in that way we are able to maintain social distance to some extent, and proper disposables, and of course all personals should take a shower after attending the cases. Now, so these are the things what you should follow during a direct examination during this period. Now, how to scale up teleophthalmology in veterinary practice. So when to start the practice? So this is a worry now. So you decide as per the status of the zone. If it is a red zone, as we are now in the red zone, so we see only very, very emergency services. But then again, a worry is there, the owner's concern, or if the patient is having pain. So all these things also has to be addressed at the same time. So here comes the use of a smartphone. So the smartphone request, you can always request for a still pic or a video of the condition of the pet from the client. So that provides a better patient satisfaction as it saves time as well as cost. Now you can see a dog here, and so this is called as an aerial view. So I told them to take this view from little high up so that we'll be able to see the problem clearly. But unfortunately, when they sent, I could see only this, and I'll try to play this video. So I was not able to do so. So this is the technological problem. Also, sometimes you will find when you deal with the teleophthalmology services. So you can always request for one more video of the patient and then work with. So the use of smartphone. So to use this, necessarily you should have a trained person in the veterinary field, especially veterinary ophthalmologist. So the iPhone. So the iPhone which we normally use, the I is changed to the I, EYEI. So that is called phonioscopy. So with the help of this, you will be able to take the fundus pictures, the video of the fundus very clearly. So the condensing lens is used, and a smartphone is also used. You can see the tapetum and the non-tapetal. So you can see the non-tapetal area up. So this is an inverted image, and the optic disc also you can see very clearly. And in this video also, you'll be able to see the picture of the video of the fundus very clearly. So there are also adapters for this now. That is smartphone fundus imaging adapters are there. So this is an adapter that you can use for such purpose. So once you take these images with the help of a smartphone, whether it is related to anterior segment or posterior segment, they can be again evaluated by the ophthalmologist. So we have in veterinary one more additional advantage of by taking a video. You can also, you do not spend more time with the patient. You can always see the video again and then study the lesions. So now in teleophthalmology, we were talking about the history taking initially. So here I want to stress the quote by the famous Canadian physician, Sir William Osler. So listen to your patient. He is telling you the diagnosis. So this is very important to support the evaluation and management coding. So some telehealth platforms also have customized dynamic questionnaires already available. So that can be always message to the client. So they will prepare the questionnaire history accordingly, and so it will be a complete history then. Now, the use of non-contact tonometers in teleophthalmology is gaining importance. So where the eye care tonovet is very important, where the instrument will not touch the eye. So this is gaining importance in human ophthalmology. If at all you want to use the tonopen, so tonopen also can be used where you have to regularly change the caps, and also the tonopen tips can be sterilized. So you have a tonometer tip sterilization station. So this sterilization is given importance these days, where the peroxide will be there in the center holes. So you can dip in all the 4 center holes and then dry it with the holes in the 4 corners. So that is how you sterilize the tonopen between cases. So also you can check for tracking moving objects. So this is also one of the important in video consultation, that you can inform the patient that whether the patient is able to see moving objects. So now here Charlie is trying to observe the moving object, that is a fish being screened on the laptop. So movement of single fish, so that is also important, whether he is able to track. Initially we thought that he is looking at it, but later on he lost interest. So actually he's having a vision deficit. So what you can do is such videos when you take, when you use for these purposes, actually the fish disappear at one point and then reappear. So all this you can, such tricks you can use in your videos to make the animals alert and check whether he is able to really see or not. So they can send this type of video to you for a examination. So this is another during COVID time. Actually, during last month, we examined elephant in Madurai. So because of the COVID restrictions, though we were invited, we could not go. So 23-year-old Parvati Sai was examined by Professor Dr. Umarani, and so she used a Pentor's light only because there was no other facilities in that hospital. So during magnification, with the help of, so it was a video call, WhatsApp call. Then with the help of magnification, we were able to appreciate some opacity in the axial and ventral cornea. And also this is the first picture, you can see the first picture. And little of the periphery of the iris also you were able to see during that time. And treatments were suggested. And 15 days post-op also, post-treatment also showed some resorbing of the corneal opacity. And you can see the iris margin better, pupillary margin in a better way. So this case is is still under observation. Probably after the COVID restrictions, if it is lifted, we will try to make a visit and see the patient directly also. Still images. So we were talking about still images and video images. Sometimes the still images also can deceive you. One patient told me that this is a eye of a crow. So they said there is some kind of bluish white thing on the eye. Then I said, you sent one pic. Then I said, okay, you sent few more pics. Then she said, no, there is no, eye is clear now. How it can immediately become clear? Then I said, okay, you send a video pic later. So then she sent a video. So in the video you can see. Cleaning is okay. Yeah. This only if you see the video you will be able to appreciate it. Probably I will replay it. So it is the nictitans membrane. So the nictitans membrane is actually cloudy and infected, and so that is actually giving a blue opacity look in the initial still picture. This is another use of a video over still. So that is what we are talking about now. So here you can see this is again done in the examination setup, not through the video, because we are using a condensing lens. So for magnification, the dog had a fight with a cat, and then subsequently there was some trauma, and they said there were hemorrhage in the eye, but when it was brought, we were not able to see any hemorrhage. And a very closer examination, and after taking a video, we were able to see the free margin of the nictitans membrane is torn. It is not smooth and continuous. So there is a tear there. So the video imaging always helps to rule out minute details like this, of the lesions like this. So this is another picture which I received from another state where they were not able to send a good picture because of the pain and the blepharospasm due to presence of a corneal lesion. So we were also told the attending doctor to put some local anesthetic, and this is the picture after putting the local anesthetic. So the retro illumination from by the tapetum is very important to assess the lesions on the superior tissues. This is again another picture that was sent. So always ask the either the clients or the attending doctors to send a picture of the eye whenever they send. Try to send a picture with the tapetum background also once, so that you will be able to tell that whether the eyeball is normal or not. So all these retro illumination pictures helps. This picture is taken again with the Sony camera of mine with the Carl Zeiss lens. So you can very clearly see here the iris, the structure of the iris very clearly. And this is also again taken with the fundus reflection. Here you can see a TVT lesion in the eye. But at the same time, with a careful examination, you can also see a small yellow shade behind this. So that says that probably by just looking at the picture, you can say that the eyeball may be normal in such cases. Here also again you can see the fundic reflection behind. This is again taken in the hospital setup. This is the anterior luxated lens, which is almost pressing the corneal endothelium. So this again calls for an emergency. So talking about the tapetal reflections, sometimes what happens, we implant for various intraocular surgeries like a glaucoma to control the intraocular pressure. After putting a gonio implant, so you can see here the valve of the gonio implant in the anterior chamber. So as and when the pressure increases, the aqueous humor escapes through this shunt and the pressure will be maintained. So to assess the presence of this, you will not be able to ask the owner to every time to come. So this, you can always make use of this digital images like this, wherein you can again stress the point that the reflection from behind is very normal, very important. See, when we talk about these reflections in animals, it is tapetal reflections, whereas in case of human beings, it is, they say, red reflex. This is again another example of tapetal reflection. This is again an intraocular lens placed 2 years after surgery in a dog, and this is a picture taken 4 years after surgery. So they keep sending pictures of the eye. So this is the best way to study or monitor the patients through images. Now, presence of the OCT, actually I told you, makes a real impact on teleophthalmology, and it is this is a case that has been done in a dog, mixed breed dog. This is the, I have given you the citation here. So you, with this fundus camera picture, you are not able to see any zone, gray zone around the focal gray zone around the, see these, all these arrows indicate more around the blood vessels. But at the same time, the infrared exposure of the same site exposes the black dark shadow here. So these are all the areas of focal shades. Now here you can see the use of an OCT. So with the help of this, you can see the bullous detachment on all these areas. So here all these areas, there is bullous detachment of the retina. Even it also gives you a measurement to the extent that it is approximately some 200 to 400 micrometer thickness. Here you can see in the D picture image, you can see the chain of bullous detachments. So this is the impact of the image production with the help of a optical coherence tomography. Now coming to the phaco surgeries, is phaco really a risk during these COVID times? A recent study at the University of Toronto, so they have found that it can also pose a risk of viral exposure, because though they are taking all precautions of changing the disposables and adequate precautions on the surgery, the ultrasonic energy that is used to break up the cataract, like I said in one of my earlier slides, can also aerosolize the water. So that can also cause the production of the liberalization of the virus in the environment. So this experiment was actually very enlightening, they said, and it is a must watch for all ophthalmologists, especially cataract surgeons in the human side. So now comes for our generation. So we have learned what is there in our field and what is to be carried further. But these 2 months of hiatus during COVID-19 has really a setback on generation Gen Z, and of course Gen Alpha is yet to come, and of course Beta. So the Gen Z is actually under trouble now. So they are less exposed to the surgical exposure procedures, primary cataract and refractive surgery. So because of this 6 feet distancing problem, social distancing, now less number of appointments are scheduled. And in older patients, usually focal cataract in older patients, so now they are also deferring surgery because of fearing of becoming sick. And other surgeries normally they do in case of human beings like refractive and cosmetic surgeries. They are young patients. So, but there again, the finance is a problem. So in total, what happens? There are less number of cases. So the young surgeons actually to cope up with this, they have to definitely do wet lab more often and listen and always learn from the online resources to cope up with the gap. So this is another tool for the residents. This is a diagnostic practice for students and the residents. Again, here the this is an augmented reality combining real and virtual images. So EyeSight by VR Magic, Indirect Ophthalmic Simulator. So here you have a model patient head. So you will first see only a model patient head. And once you wear this indirect ophthalmoscope hat, you will be able to see a 3D virtual patient standing in front of you. So then with the help of an indirect lens, you can study the status of the retina. So that is how you try to get familiarized with this equipment. So these are simulators that are available in the market now for trainees. So now coming to the challenges, we have only 2 more slides. So coming to the challenges, so we were talking about the ophthalmology, teleophthalmology process, about visual acuity. Visual acuity, you have challenges, right? They are not always accurate. If they using these refraction tools or mobile platforms, they are not always accurate as in a office testing. Then regarding the IOP also, though instruments are available, like how you check blood pressure, these are more expensive and also again accuracy is not well tested. So there exists a major gap now in the performance of these remote tonometric measurements. So again, app-based ancillary testing methods we discussed are also are to be tried again in a better way for common use in teleophthalmology service. So the reimbursement policies for telehealth were expanded on March 13, 2020 under the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. And so documentation, billing and compilation for ambulatory ophthalmology in e-health. So though this is there, the initial investment is very high. So it is, there are sufficient health companies are also, telehealth companies are also there to support, but you need a good real funding to start this process in a clinical setup. And again, differences in health information, exchange standards, data security, liability, and cost of equipment. So those are all poses challenges in teleophthalmology. So though we talk about all these challenges in teleophthalmology, it is intended always that the teleophthalmology is not going to replace a face-to-face consultation. But the fact is, during this time in human medicine, the pandemic has actually transformed the scenario. Telehealth platforms claim that virtual patient visits have increased between 257 to 700%, and patients are also happy for a digital care. But in veterinary medicine, we cannot treat every one of our patients with equal level of suspicion. So, and use of a PPE always is also going to be very costly. And we also cannot at the same time wait for the resolution of the illness and then start our practice. So we always have to find a balance between what is maximum available treatments that we can provide, at the same time maintaining a minimum possible risk of infection, risk of transmission of infection during our cross-examination procedures, especially in ophthalmology. Okay, with this, I will try to conclude my talk now here, that teleophthalmology services are going to definitely will find their place and will help the gap in the COVID pandemic season for a proper medical delivery. And I thank now the organizers of the Indian Society for Veterinary Surgery and also the knowledge partner for this tele seminar to happen. I will say like that, tele seminar to happen, that is Indus Pharmaceuticals, for providing a platform for me to deliver this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Ma'am, we have a few questions. I'll read out the questions for you if you can resolve the queries of the attendees. The first question is how to evaluate visual acuity of dogs in routine clinical practice.
Yeah, visual acuity is actually a refraction problem. So there are eye charts specifically for dogs and cats. So whether they are able to see depending upon the size of the pictures in the chart. So that is not actually very well used in our practice. And refraction correction or visual acuity comes usually in understanding the refraction error following surgery, that is after cataract surgery, wherein you have to definitely use only a retinoscope.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, one more question is how to decide whether to retain or excise the eyeball in case of accidental prolapse.
It's a very good question. So normally when we look into the eyeball, so we look at the damage of the eye. Okay, so damages in the sense there will be chemosis and there will be debris and there will be a positional change for the eyeball. So if there is because the medial rectus is smaller when compared to the other straight muscles, you will find a tear of the medial rectus muscles. Hence, you will find the positioning of the eyeball more towards the lateral side. So where repositioning always is considered, but you have to reconstruct the rectus muscle also in this case. Then another important point is the worry from the owner is whether after repositioning, if the patient is brought within a period of half an hour to 1 hour, you have a very good chance to reposition the eyeball. But by looking at the eye, you can say if the pupil is brought in a myotic state, there is always chance for the vision to regain. So you can decide accordingly.
Ma'am, one more question is, thank you, ma'am. One more question is, what is the treatment of corneal opacity and how to differentiate different type of opacities tele-ophthalmologically?
Yeah, here the slit lamp biomicroscope, pictures taken with the slit lamp biomicroscope are used in teleophthalmology, where it cannot be done with the help of a patient owner. So necessarily they have to see a doctor, and the doctor can take a picture of the eye, wherein trans illumination of the cornea pictures are always useful, not the diffuse light which we use in this slit lamp. So, or you can also study the diffuse light as well as the slit and also the trans illumination. So with the help of this, you will be able to grade the corneal ulcers on the corneal opacities on the eye.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your excellent presentation and enlightening everyone, correlating the virtual ophthalmology with tele-ophthalmology under such COVID pandemic. And thank you for providing a safer and newer approach for treating patients during such pandemic conditions. Further, we also know that in India, veterinary ophthalmology is still in infancy stage. But in the era of information and technology, internet helps the pet owners to know in detail about the diagnosis and treatment aspect that are available. So your today's presentation will be very much helpful to veterinarians for diagnosis of different ophthalmic conditions. And further, I would also like to thank the president of the Indian Society for Veterinary Surgery, executive secretary of the Indian Society for Veterinary Surgery for wholehearted support for smooth conduct of the webinars. Further, I would like to thank knowledge partner Intas Animal Health, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, for his wholehearted support and providing us the platform to conduct the webinars. I would also like to thank the entire executive committee, especially Dr. Deepak Tiwari, for his support and for the smooth conduct of webinar, along with Dr. Nilesh Sindhu from HISAR for all their support and guidance for the smooth conduct of the webinar. Thank you very much. I would further like to thank the attendees for their kind and patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.